Hello and welcome to Pratik Chess Videos.
Here just friends, today we are going to see a game between, well, this game is between, yes, Nakamura and Vidit. Firstly, there was the second second round clash, if you remember. Third round or second round, yeah, second round clash. Vidit totally destroyed Nakamura in it. Just sacked the sacked the bishop on h3 and built upon the sacrifice. So will this game also turn out like this? Let's see. All right, with it was white, Nakamura was black. The game, well, the game started e4 and now c5 or e5. There's an option. All right, what was played? c5 or e5? e5. Nakamura chose to play a much solid opening, but knight f3, knight c6, and now bishop c4, knight f6, d3, h6, now c3. Idea is short castle and d4, I presume. Well, the play is in the center, so d6, short castle. Now d4, rook e1, these things are coming. So now g5. Now rook to g8, h5, g4 is a nice idea in this position. Rook g8, h5, g4 or h4, h3. So black's idea is, I think, to attack on the king side. So knight b d2, and it isn't premature, it is completely justified. Bishop g7, and black can also castle. There's no risk actually. The g5 pawn isn't that weak. Now bishop b3. Well, the idea is d4, I think, and avoiding any knight a5. So nice one, and bishop c2 can also come. Charming ideas. a5. Well, a5, now b5 can come, or a4 can also come, and a5. I think the idea is to just play a waiting move. That's my opinion. I think just playing a waiting move, and maybe in the future b5 a4 attack can be organized on the which side. um that would be correct, the queen side. I mean, the king isn't there to attack, but at least there's a flank attack which does not involve the king. So all right, now a5. Okay, accepted. And after a5, a4, preventing the b5 a4 idea, just cementing the pawn over there. And well, that is the idea. Short castle, as I said, the king is perfectly safe, and the g5 pawn unsafe. It may seem it's not unsafe. uh, and if white tries to threaten this pawn, black can anytime play knight h7. and then knight h7 and defend, and maybe in a f5, king h8 f5. So after a4 short castle, knight c4. A typical maneuver in the Ruy Lopez, Italian Ruy Lopez. These type of structures involving d3, e4 closed. Well, knight can go to e3 and hop to f5 or d5. So bishop e6. Well, this maneuver is not only common in the Ruy Lopez openings but also the structures. As you can see, this structure is a Ruy Lopez one, so that's why this idea is playable. So bishop e6, well, pinning the knight so that white cannot complete his idea. But just took e1, a developing move. The rook is developed, and I think the next move might be d4 because the e4 pawn needed to be given protection before carrying out d4. So that's why rook e1 giving protection to the e4 pawn, and now d4 can be played. So, well, now after all of this, so nice moves. So rook e8, black tries to do the same, and well, black can also stage a maneuver with knight h7, knight f8, knight g6, or knight d7, knight f8, knight g6. This can be a thing. So well, now what? Now h3. Yeah, this square is protected so that no g4, so that no bishop g4, knight g4 could come. And well, that's pretty much the idea, and also this can serve as a purpose to play knight f1, knight s2, knight f1, knight g3, or even knight s2, knight g4. And knight s2 queen f3 is also a typical idea. So now after h3, queen d7, connecting the rooks. Uh, a developing move, rook a d8 can come. I believe in rook a d8, and there are in the air possibilities of sacrifice on h3. So nice move overall. Bishop to d2, developing move. Well, we develop the bishop. We can't say develop, but at least move it out of the way. Now the rook on a1 is more free, uh, and if the queen moves, then the both rooks will be connected. Alright, so, and it also serves as a kind of waiting move. So now rook a d8. Well, the idea is to play d5, or even better knight e7, d5. But the problem in all of this d5 is the e5 pawn. If you play d5, e5 hangs because of the two knights. So I think the better course of d5 for black is to first play knight at 7, then d5, so that the two pieces can protect it, or the bishop can be traded, then d5. That's also a possible course of play. Bishop takes c5. So just, but it's not completely sure whether it will be played or not. It's just the idea which is lurking in the air, a possibility. So now, well, now what? Now queen to c2. Okay, queen to c2. We the back queen and the rooks are connected, and also Now the queen is on a nice place on this diagonal, and d4 is more of an idea now. So now b6. Well, so far so good for black. Now b6, it's just a quiet move and also reinforcing the a5 pawn. Now bishop to a3. Sorry, bishop to, yeah, well, bishop to a2, not a3. I missaid. Yeah, I misspelled. So bishop to a2. Idea is, I think, well, this is unclear what idea this is, but the most uh, let's say likely idea is that the knight will be moved. uh, I think it will be d4 bishop b1, bishop b1 d4, so that the this diagonal will be done by the bishop and the queen on the bishop will be on b1, the queen will be on c2. So I think white will try to form a battery on the diagonal. That's my take on this position. So knight to h5, black, well, firstly reinforces the e5 pawn with bishop on g7, and likely idea is knight f4. f5 is unlikely, but well, f5 is unlikely. But now knight h5, interesting. So now knight to e3. Alright, knight to e3. What does this stand for? Well, knight to e3 idea is, I think, the most likely one is to play knight d5, or possibly exchange the bishop and then play knight d5, so that no challenger of here knight d5 c4 can be played. But I think the more likely idea is to play bishop b1 d4, carry out with the plan I discussed. Alright, so now bishop into a2, rook into a2, knight e7. That's the thing. d5 is a possible idea. Yep, I think d5 is the idea, because the e5 square is sufficiently, e5 pawn is sufficiently protected, and d5 serves as a gain of space for black. So I think d5 is the idea. So now after rook into, well, after knight e7, d4, white strikes first. So now d4, well, before black strikes on d5, white strikes on d4. So I think the main idea of this is to gain space, and if black captures, it's really bad with the center pawns. So d into e5 is a likely idea, also likely d5. But I think white will maintain the tension for some moves. But black resigns the tension, e into d4, c into d4. And now d5, black tries to form an white's isolated pawn. Well, this is a well-known technique. First exchange one center pawn, and then break 2 versus 1. So now d5. Now e5. Well, white doesn't want to create an isolated pawn. Instead, white blocks the opponent's bishop on g7, so that it becomes bad. White opens the diagonal, but this is the advantage, that the centers block, uh, and the knights very limited. Knight on f3. So this is the thing. So now rook to c8, c5. Black immediately tries to organize a French type of break on c5. So this c5 break normally occurs in the French, where there's a c3 pawn in this, where often there's a c3 pawn in this picture is not, and now it's better to organize the c5 break. But this doesn't turn out very well, especially this rook c8 move. It's a bit bad because, well, you lost a tempo, and I think more concrete would have been better, but not a c not some not an accuracy, just a low than best move. So rook e3, white tries to play rook c3, and I think rook lift this guy and develop it. But c5, well, this was a not so nice move. It wasn't an inaccuracy, but still a not so nice move because, uh, well, how do I put this? So c5, well, c5 now. It may look very good that is now c into d4 is coming. The rook is saying the center is in hassle, but there's this concrete move knight to g4, and now it's really tricky for black to do something, as taking the pawn leads to some complications, but they are worth exploring. See, so take see, so you can't take the pawn, that's for sure. Yeah, you won't take the pawn here because after c into d4, black runs into queen to d3, and the activity is pretty nice. So the queen comes to d4, the d5 pawn is isolated actually, and the two knights spring into action, and e6 can be organized at a later moment. The rooks are coming in through the c file, so it's pretty bad for black. That's why c5 isn't such a good move. White has a slight edge, but now white plays d into c5, giving up the slight edge. White didn't notice this knight g4 move, and now his advantage is away. But it's very tricky, as the most obvious move rook into c5. Here, see, rook into c5, most obvious move, as I can see. Alright, now this is again an inaccuracy, because you should have, well, this is a pen, so we can insert a move before taking. So black should have played knight f4, inserting a move in between, and now d4 can come, and the knight's pretty active, so it's a reasonable position for black. But now rook into c5, so queen to d1, the queen pulls back, and now white still has a slight edge. Queen to knight to f4. Black brings the knight into a better square. b4 attacks the c5 rook, makes room for the d2 bishop. Now rook c8. Black refuses to take and make the d2 bishop an active piece. Very thoughtful of Nakamura. So b into a5, b into a5, obvious moves exchanging. So now bishop into a5. Now white is a pawn up, but it still is nothing more than a slight edge. Now knight to c6, attacking the a5 bishop. Though white has a outside passed pawn, which is very efficient, but it's only a slight edge because white's e5 pawn is notably weak, and black has very active pieces on here. See, these all pieces are very active, and this pawn can this pawn can go up the board. So that's the reason why white has nothing but a slight edge. That is until after bishop to c3, moving away from the knight, which was threatening to take the bishop. Black played knight into e5, and dubious move which officially gives a better position to white, because now we are trading our very active piece, and actually this can be refuted tactically as a result of, well, this there are some tactics here. Bishop into e5, bishop into e5, firstly exchanging the knight, and now knight into d5. Well, nice move. Now idea is to, well, we firstly take a pawn, threaten knight f6 with fork, and attack the e5 bishop. So it's pretty hard to defend. Only moves knight into d5, but now black's position turns very unpleasant after knight into e5, and now worsening the matter, black applies salt to his wound and plays queen to e6, which worsens black's matters, because now after queen to e6 you put the queen in direct contact with the e1 rook, and also the knight on d5 is more vulnerable, and the 7th rank can be exploited. So queen to d6, uh, well, after queen to d6, if queen to d6 now, well, pretty nice of a tactic, attacking here, essentially a double attack. But rook a e3, white is no short of tactics, it's pinned, so that's why rook a e3, and now knight to c4 can come, and it's pretty tricky of what to do as black, that's why white is better. So queen to e6, now white has a decisive advantage and thus needs to exploit it. Rook to d3, attacking the knight. As I said, white has plans to go to the 7th rank and terrorize this f7 pawn, and the king is unsafe now. Well, the king was safe when the g7 bishop was there, but white exchanged the g7 bishop, white exchanged the key defender, which is a nice attacking rule, and now the attack will fall very easily and very devastatingly on black. So now knight f4, rook to d6, attacking the e6 queen, queen to a2. Now the queen runs to a2, still protecting the f7 pawn, and potentially hoping for a rook c2, but just rook into h6. Yes, rook into h6. Now here, see, rook into h6 idea is that we just take a pawn, a free pawn, very nice, and queen to b2. That's one of the many worst moves you could play with the queen, and it happened. Queen to b2 and blunder, because, well, now it may seem like a totally obvious move, attacking the e5 knight. What else could be obvious? But there is something known as tactics in chess, and they are very tricky. So now queen to d7, attacking, now threatening queen into f7 mate. Now the clever ruse is that if rook into e5, then queen into c8 check, King to g7 is met by queen to h8 mate. Not only do we win a rook, we also win the game by some tactics. So that's the thing here. Now black could have defended here with a clever intermediate move, knight to e2 check, rook into e2, queen to c1 check, only move queen to c1 check. Pretty complicated here. King to h2, rook into e5, rook into e5 is a nice move, but better is rook to f6. So now queen to c7. Actually, there's a cunning trick here. So firstly, we'll look at the here. So well, here is completely winning, but there's a clever trick that actually, if you take here, then white loses the game on white. I think loses the game because now queen to f4 check, king g1, rook c1 check, rook e1, rook into e1 mate, g3, queen into f2 check, king h1, rook c1 check, rook e1, rook into e1 mate. Very clever trap, but here white plays this move and escapes. But here's the thing, that after queen to d7, queen to b3 was played, which is a blunder, of total blunder. Well, this is also a blunder, I think. Yeah, this is also a blunder. But this is a total blunder. Now, black loses because of tactics. Now, queen to f5. One plan is to take on g5, another is to play queen h7 check. Pretty clever. Knight to g6, blocking the queen from playing queen h7, and also blocking the king, and also this. But the serious note is that rook into g6 check, amazing move, finishes the game on the spot, completely on the spot. So whoa, amazing. So this here Nakamura resigned. Now if f into g6, then queen into g6 check, king to f8 runs into a beautiful knight d7 checkmate, king to h8 runs also into, well, now queen to h6 check, king to d8, and then queen to g6 check, king to h8, and now knight f7 check is not that good, queen h5 check, king to g7. Now queen to g6 is good, queen to g5 is equally good, king to f8, queen f6 check, king to g8. See, now if see, now seriously, if king to h8, then well, it's just, I think, a mate. And yep, it's a complicated sequence, but just here, take it, take it, take it here. Now rook to e3, rook g. Well, now it's just a mate. See how it happened. Now we zigzagged our way. Rook e3 was a nice move. Rook g3 here. So rook c1 check, rook c6. Black tried preventing, but it was nothing but loss. So well, that's why. And if king to f8, just I say knight d7. The main line. Yup. So this was the game. I hope you like this video. Don't forget to click the subscribe button and the bell icon. Thank you.